Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and for Book Trek 2021, today we're talking about Star Trek Enterprise, Broken Bow. Now, Book Trek 2021 is coming to a close now. The year 2021 is ending the 5-month mission that I've been embarked on with some other booktubers, some crew, I think, who we maybe lost along the way. It was a 5-month mission to basically explore Star Trek literature, Star Trek fiction, from production order, from Star Trek the original series, and then to TNG, then to DS9, then to Voyager, and finishing off with Enterprise. We did not really get into the modern Star Trek during this mission. Maybe next year, I don't know. We'll see about where Book Trek will lead us. But I'm finishing it off here this year with the novelization of the script for the pilot for Enterprise, which was written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, and the novelization is by Diane Carey, somebody who has written very widely in Star Trek, and whose stuff I overall do enjoy. Now, Enterprise was really kind of a different beast when it came out. It followed after DS9 and then Voyager, where these shows have been pushing Star Trek further into the future. And Enterprise was, in certain ways, backward-looking. It sought to look at the birth of the Federation. So it's set 100 years after Zefram Cochrane achieved warp, which is something that we saw in Star Trek First Contact, the film. And it's 100 years before the era of Kirk and Spock. So this is a humanity that is very new to space travel. They don't really understand necessarily what's out in the galaxy. They are not a big, strong federation. They really, they're the little guys out there. And humanity has also, sorry, I'm getting a little bit distracted as I'm talking because right out my window, there's a woodpecker that I'm watching. And how do you not watch a woodpecker when you see one? It's going up the tree right now. Okay. He's starting to get out of sight now. I can keep talking. This is a humanity that has not really achieved the, I guess you could say, enlightenment of Picard's era. There is a large contrast within this story with humanity and Vulcans. Now, because this is the pilot episode, I will say that I think that the pilot to Enterprise is really one of the strongest that Star Trek ever had. Maybe, it comes, I think, right along with DS9's pilot Emissary. It was a really strong pilot. It established the characters pretty well, and they remained fairly consistent. I think Dr. Phlox is maybe the only one that changed just a little bit as things went on. He kind of became a little bit less puckish. But otherwise, it was a really good start to a series. And it established a humanity that had been in contact with Vulcans ever since Zefram Cochrane achieved warp. The Vulcans were going by. They saw that humanity had just used warp, so they stopped in for a visit. And we're 100 years past that. So at this point, the Vulcans have been shepherding humanity, but only to a certain point. Many humans think that Vulcans have been purposely holding them back. And humans have been ready to explore, and the Vulcans kind of keep telling them they're not ready all the time. And one person who really resents this is the captain of the Enterprise, Jonathan Archer, whose father was responsible for designing the warp drive for the Enterprise, the first warp drive that can go up to warp 5. And unfortunately, his father died before he could see this thing take off, and Archer blames the Vulcans for that, for delaying things over and over and over again. But in this story, we see humans first come into contact with Klingons. A Klingon crash lands out in a field in the Midwest of the U.S. somewhere, being chased by a new enemy race that we are introduced to called the Suliban. And this injured Klingon is being delivered back to Kronos, the Klingon homeworld, by Jonathan Archer. And they have a bunch of things going wrong along the way, of course. But one of the biggest cruxes of this whole thing is the relationship between humans and Vulcans, because we have a Vulcan science officer who is not really a part of Starfleet. She is there really at the behest of the Vulcans. And there's a lot of mistrust about her and a lot of resentment. And we see a lot of contrast. I'm going back to that whole idea that we're not really at Picard's era yet. Humanity has largely gotten rid of poverty and hunger and all of that on Earth, but we still have certain ways to go. So they proudly contrast, the humans do, their meat eating against Vulcan vegetarianism. It comes up a couple times in this that humans still love to eat meat, and there's not really a certain consciousness about what that does to animals or anything like that. It's something that we do end up seeing in Picard's era, where if somebody's going to eat meat, it's something that's been replicated. No, animals had to be killed for that, but we don't get that impression here that humanity is still killing animals. So that's just one example of humanity is still on its way to what we end up seeing in Picard's era. And like I said, I thought it was a really good pilot, and Diane Carey doesn't do much to change the pilot at all. It's pretty much the pilot, so I think the story is still really solid. Her writing, I think, is perfectly fine and serviceable. I think that there's an odd... At one point, there is a battle, a space battle, with Sulabans, and she has an overuse of exclamation points, and not just like in people talking. I mean, just like within the text, and unnecessarily. Like at one point, I think she talks about how she opened up a cabinet and started distributing phaser pistols, but it ends with an exclamation point. Like, that's not exciting. I don't know why you're yelling at me as a reader about that. But that's just kind of a minor quibble. You find that kind of stuff in some of these books sometimes. They get a little bit cheesy in that way. But overall, I always like the pilot, so therefore I do like this. And if nobody's ever given Enterprise a shot, I know a lot of Star Trek fans who haven't. I was one for a long time, but I really highly recommend that you give this show a try. The first 2 seasons are okay. Season 3 and 4 actually get really good. Some excellent Star Trek when that goes on, but season 1 and 2 are not bad at all. They're just, they're middling for the most part. There aren't too many missteps in this series, which I'm happy to say. So anyway, if you're a Star Trek fan, I would actually recommend you give this a shot. Nothing great, nothing spectacular, but if you like the pilot, you'll like this. So anyway, that concludes Book Trek 2021. It was a great run. I want to thank the other booktubers who went along with us on this journey, and some people who don't have booktube channels who also came along. I want to thank them as well. I want to especially thank Steve Donahue, who made a terrific amount of videos throughout all this. Of course, he reads way more and way faster than I do, and he's got more time to make videos. So I make videos when I can, but sometimes they were kind of late. But I have been able to make a video for every iteration of Star Trek. And that concludes this 5-month mission. We'll see what next year holds. But anyway, as always, thank you, BookTube, and of course, live long and prosper.